I was on my deathbed from alcohol and I got sober on my own and I walked 2,000 miles. You'll be hard pressed to find somebody that's more passionate about hiking and backpacking than I am.
Yeah.
If your only challenge for the day is waiting in a line at Starbucks,
Yeah.
you need to reevaluate your fucking life. All that stuff that people complain about in towns and being offended about, it doesn't make any difference
Totally.
out there. All that stuff that people complain about in towns and being offended about, it doesn't make any difference
Totally.
out there.
Welcome back to the Peanut Butter and Mountains podcast. Today's guest has completed the AT, PCT, and CDT, along with a bunch of other through hikes as well. And he's a super talented and photographer to boot. So we're super stoked to have him on. This is the second time back to the podcast, IBTAT.
Thanks, brother. Thanks again for having me. It's been a while.
Dude, I'm stoked, man. And I said this at our last podcast, but man, I would, back when I would watch your PCT episodes, I would piss my girlfriend. It was my ex-girlfriend. Well, now it's my ex-girlfriend, probably because of this. I'd piss her off all the time when we'd go hiking because I'd always go, back on trail, man. Shit. She'd be like, shut up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I want to thank you.
I'm sure you're not the only one that has to deal with that. I've had little old ladies come up to me at REI saying that shit to me. So it's just one of those things.
Really?
But hey, yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, we can get into that working at REI and all that this past year. But yeah, it's always
I'd love
nuts
to hear
when
about that.
you know, those taglines that stay with people. And it's one of those things when I started saying that stuff, it's just, I didn't think about that, but I guess you do it enough times over a through hike that catches on to people. And yeah, I get it repeated back to me quite often. And even now my coworkers will fuck with me sometimes and say that, but good times.
I bet, man. Yeah, what's it like working at REI in a mountain town on the Colorado Trail? You know, do a lot of people come in and know you and, you know, ask for advice? Is that, I mean, you got to be probably one of the definite bigger, well-known people at the place, I would imagine.
You know, it's weird. Well, I worked at Denver REI downtown, so I wouldn't call it a mountain town. Denver is just, it's like any other city really. So yes, you can see the front range from where you're at, but you're still miles away from the mountains. So it's not like going into a small town like Leadville or Salida or Silverton, some of those towns right off the CT. It's still very touristy, and you know, people will come there as a tourist destination. That being said, you know, I came to work at REI. It's not like, you know, the main reason I wanted to get a job there is because I wanted to pass off my knowledge to hikers. That's why I got a job on the AT at mountain crossings in Georgia. All this knowledge I've built up in my head over the last 6-7 years, I wanted to pass that on to people. Well, I show up at REI and, you know, and during my interview, I'm like, well, I've done this and this and this and this. Cool. Day number one, let's throw you on a fucking cash register. So I've basically been working at the cash registers for the past year and a half at REI. And, you know, and it's changed my mindset in that, well, why the fuck did I get hired here? I can ring up customers at 7:11. Okay. I didn't come here to ring up customers and talk about the fucking weather with some tourist from Texas. Okay. I came here to pass along my knowledge, and they could give two shits about that. So at this point, it's like, whatever, you don't look at me as another, you know, retail employee, go ahead. I'll perform my duty as so. You know what I mean? It's really sucked this past year because I've got all this knowledge in my head and I can't pass that along to hikers. And that's why I came to work there in the first place. So
Yeah, you feel like you'd be way more useful in a different area of the store.
well, you know, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody that's more passionate about hiking and backpacking than I am.
Yeah.
And you know, I want to be able to find you know, I backtrack to when I was first starting out in through hiking. It was 2017. You know, I just started getting in overnight trips, and I was living in Asheville, North Carolina. And I went into the local REI there, you know, all green, you know, green as can be. Didn't know what I was preparing for the AT, and I didn't know shit really other than watching a couple of YouTubers. And I found one gal that worked at that Asheville, North Carolina REI that was a through hiker. She had done the AT. And I asked her, I said, you know, not to sound like a creep, but give me your schedule. I'm not coming in this store unless you're working, and I want you to give me the no bullshit answer of what I'm preparing for. And you know, she was such a wealth of knowledge for me, talking about the same advice I give people nowadays, like, stop stressing about this shit. You're just walking, you know, whatever. But she'd give me tips on the gear I might need and what I might not need. And I loved that, you know, and that's what I want to give people coming into my store and give them the no bullshit answer. But I just can't do that at the registers. So it is what it is, man. I'm going hiking in 2.5 months. I can just say goodbye to the fucking retail space again.
Yeah, do you think you'll come back to like an REI, or like what's you
No.
got the AZT coming up, right? Is what you got coming. And so
No,
what's
my plans have changed.
Yeah.
I am a fly by the seat of my pants kind of gal. I think I've discussed over in social media over the past year 3 different plans that I, you know, was going to do this upcoming year.
yeah.
I am going to do the Triple Crown again. I looking back at this past year living in a town, I missed this. I mean, 6 months off trail is a long time for me. I've been off trail since October of 2023. Like, I can't take this shit anymore. I missed the trail so much, and I started to think about, well, the AZT, yeah, that looks like a badass trail. But having gone overseas the last few years on my through hikes and doing these shorter trails, it's not enough for me anymore. You know what I mean? When I get finished, I'm getting close to finishing these trails, I dread going back to society so much. I just want it to keep going regardless of how trashed my body and my spirit is on these long trails. But, you know, the longer I spend off the trail, the more I realize I just want to be out there as long as possible. So I've decided to do the Triple Crown once again, and I'll be out in the PCT here in a couple months. So
Awesome. Okay, so what is your motivation to through hike changed from you started in, I think it was 20 with the AT, right? Around in there. How has your motivation changed from 2018 2025?
the motivation is still there. It hasn't changed since day number 1. I didn't know what I was getting into back in 2018, quite honestly. I was newly sober. I was just kind of learning how to live again. And I just wanted to find a purpose in life. That's where I was at in 2018. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had spent the last 15 years drinking myself basically to my deathbed, and I was just learning how to live again. I figured what better way to get out in the woods and to learn as I go and just recover and heal myself and all that. Now, having done that after 2018, I realized, yeah, that was the answer. That's the answer to my happiness, my own personal demons that I deal with. The best way to battle those is to be out on trail walking and putting my body through hell. And that hasn't changed. There's a reason why I keep going out and doing these trails is because I'm not finished healing. All the bullshit that I went through as an alcoholic most of my life, all those demons are still there. Hiking is therapy for me. That's my main motivation, is to get out there and deal with this shit that I got going on in my head all the time, you know?
Do you feel like there is a withdrawal period when you do finish a hike?
Oh, 100%. I mean, so this has happened on all the trails I've ever done. Well, aside from the shorter ones maybe, but the Triple Crown trails. And if you go out back and watch, you know, my CDT hike especially, my body was so ragged towards the end there. And if you go back and watch second to last video or whatever it is, I just got up over the last peak in Montana, and it was basically smooth sailing down to the border. And you'll see me get up to that peak, and at that point, I lost like 30 pounds. I'm pretty sure I had COVID, and my shoes there was holes in both my shoes, and I was so ready to wrap up that trail physically and mentally. It had taken everything out of me. On the other side of that, when I was sitting up on that peak, I got to thinking also, as destroyed as my body is, I know what I'm going to have to go back to, working a normal 9-to-5 bullshit job and dealing with, you know, people in town and stuff. And I just wanted to keep going. So when you finish these trails, it's a relief that you can sleep in every day, and you don't have to push miles, and you don't have to shit in a hole, and you don't have to worry about running water and all this stuff. That quickly dissipates. For me, it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm missing the trail again. So there's a small period of time where you're glad to be done, just because you're so physically wrecked. But that shortly you start looking through rose-colored glasses, and you're like, well, yeah, my ass was chafing, my toenails were falling off, and I had COVID and all this shit, but I would rather be out there doing that than living in a town dealing with 9-to-5 bullshit. So
okay. Now, do you, like, when you're starting to gear up for these hikes again, and you've done all 3 of these prior, do you still get nervous before a big through hike, or does it kind of feel like it's basically second nature for you at this point?
it's second nature for me now. I don't get nervous at all, and really, I don't get nervous. And I get people reaching out to me through social media, and they're preparing for their first one, and you can they're firing off a million questions, and they're nervous and they don't know what to expect. And I tell them all the same thing. Once you step foot off the southern or northern terminus, all that planning and stress you were putting yourself through goes way out the window. It doesn't, all that planning and stressing yourself out does no good for you whatsoever. You have to take these trails as they come. When I did the PCT, only time I was nervous was when I was probably, I don't know, 100 miles away from the Sierra Nevada, and you can see those Snow Peak Mountains off in the distance 100 miles away. And I had never hiked on snow in elevation before in my life. And looking at those Snow Peak Mountains, I'm like, holy shit, I have to go up in that? I've never done this before. I was scared shitless. But you take it as it comes and you push through it. You're going to come across barriers all the time on these trails. What are you going to do? You have two choices. You either push through it and figure out a way, or you go home. But there's no sense in stressing about this stuff. You just take it as it comes. So the only planning I do on these long trails now is I book my flight. How do I get to the southern terminus? Where is my first water source? How many days of food do I have to carry this first stretch to the next town? That's all I do.
Yeah.
And then it's just away you go.
You,
I know my gear is good to go. I've hiked with my same setup basically for the last 7 years. I know that gear works in pretty much every weather condition at this point. So, there's no questions there. It's just walking.
yeah. One thing that I think is really cool that you did, especially on the PCT, was a high snow year that you went through there, or at least you went through where there was quite a bit of snow, I remember. And well, one, you lost your glasses, dude. You lost your glasses, bro. I brought this up on another podcast once that I had with a buddy, and I go, yeah, have you ever watched IBTAT? I was like, dude, this guy lost his glasses in the Sierra Nevada at like 10,000, 11,000 feet. You're hiking through there. The sun's way worse at that elevation. Not only that, the sun is hitting snow. Yeah. Dude, can you talk a little bit about that? What was going through your head? I mean, you ended up doing was fantastic. But I love it because I feel like, your problem solving skills on these trails increase. And you can always bring that into like other trails in real life and all that type of stuff. But yeah, like how did that work out for you?
So if I remember correctly, I'd gone up over, the early part of the Sierra. Once you get up into the shit, it's no joke. There's a lot of sketchy passes you have to go over. And in 2019, it was a high snow year, and I know a lot of people were flipping, and I just wanted to push through. I didn't want to have to flip and deal with all the logistical shit. So I said, all right, we're going. So Mather Pass was one of the sketchiest experiences of my life. These passes in the Sierra Nevada, you basically have to get up way before sunrise and get up over these passes before the sun hits it because the snow starts melting and you start post-holing. It's just safer to go up when it's hard ice. So, you're starting it in dark before sunrise, and going up over Mather Pass, it was a combination of, getting up over ice and rock scrambling, because the PCT at that point was just buried under. There was no trail. So it's basically, there's enough people out there, you start following the crowd and realizing, you have to stay in people's footprints and all this stuff. So if I remember correctly, I was getting up and we're rock scrambling. So you go over snow and then rock scramble, snow, rock scramble. And, I was wearing crampons at the time. So when I got up to the rock portion of it, it didn't make sense to have my crampons on because it just been too, off kilter. So what I was doing was taking off my crampons during the rock scrambles, then stopping, putting my crampons back on when I got back to snow. And at one point in time, when I was changing out my crampons, my sunglasses had fallen off my head. Didn't realize it because you're just so focused on getting up over this damn pass and not dying. I realized that my sunglasses had fallen off. And then there's another pass you go up over, Muir Pass. It's basically just snowfields. There's about 2 miles of snowfields before the pass and the 2 miles of snowfields after the pass. And like you said, when that sun hits that snow in the early afternoon, it is just blinding. And I didn't have my sunglasses. So what I did was, two things. I had my buff I was wearing on my head. So I basically put that over my eyes, and it was worn out enough to where I could at least see a little bit through my buff, But I had really no choice because I was staring at that snow all day. My eyes would be messed up. So that helped a little bit. And also, I was hiking. I'd gotten with a partner early on in the Sierra, a guy from Israel, and Tortuga. And what I would do a lot of the times is I would get right up on his ass and I would just stare into his shadow as he was walking in front of me. And that helped a little bit too. But yeah,
Smart.
basically, I just used my buff in the midday when the sun was just blinding, but my eyes did hurt. I would notice when I get in my tent at night that even staring through my buff, it did a number on my eyes. And then I was able to pick up another pair of cheap sunglasses when I got to the next town. But yeah, it was a rough stretch with no glasses for sure.
Dude, that was brilliant. And for anybody wondering, well, why couldn't you just get off trail and get another pair of sunglasses in the middle of the Sierra, dude?
No.
It ain't happening.
No,
It ain't happening.
the longest stretch I had that year, I think it was 9 days. I was 9 days from the nearest
Yeah.
resupply. So yeah, you're left to your own devices up there. You make it work, or you're screwed basically. So luckily, on the PCT, especially to the Sierra, everybody kind of bunches up and safety first. So there's enough people out there. It's not like you're by yourself. There's groups of people up there. And as somebody like me who loves hiking solo, I'm not stupid enough to attempt something like that by myself. Safety always comes first. So you're out there with other people, you're feeding off each other, and people are giving each other advice. And let's just get through this thing safe. That's our only concern, really.
And honestly, dude, like I have a lot of respect for the folks that threw the Sierra instead of doing the flip flop and this and that, or skipping. I mean, it's like 400 miles. I mean, it's quite a large chunk.
And arguably the Sierra, the most beautiful part of the PCT. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous up there. And as scared as I was, some of those. Looking back, I mean, I have a Rolodex of memories in my head at this point, and looking back at some of those passes when you're sitting on top of that thing and you're 360-degree of snow-peaked mountains, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's worth it, in my opinion. If I would have flipped that year, I would regret it to this day. It sucks at the time, but man, those memories, they're amazing, and the camaraderie you get with these hikers pushing through all the same shit. You guys, it's worth it, in my opinion. And the fear mongering is always there on these trails. It was on the CDT and the San Juans. It was on the PCT and the Sierra. People are going to fear monger the shit out of you. Go up and see that stuff for yourself. Only you know what you're capable of. Don't let, you can always backtrack. Don't let some other hiker say, well, it was too dangerous for me, so you probably won't be able to do it. Well, fuck them. Go up and see it for yourself. If you don't think it's safe enough, then backtrack. But don't let some other person dictate your hike. I think that's bullshit. If you were one of those flippers that year, more power to you. That was your hike. You do what you want. If you thought it was safer to do it that way, that was your hike, okay? No regrets there. I don't care. I don't know judgment. But for me personally, I want to go see that shit myself and see what my body's capable of.
You nailed it, man, because I don't know how many times that I've done like a 14er in Colorado, and you read the trip reports and you got Karen commenting or Heath commenting, and they're like, dude, scariest thing I've ever done. 5 scrambling and all this type of stuff. And then you kind of freak yourself out reading these reports, right. And then you go up there and you're like, dude, that was like class 3. That was just all depends on people's prior experience and what their perception is. I mean, you couldn't be more right. Like people's perceptions and their previous experience really dictates how they're going to view it at the time.
Well, as well as I do, the stories get cooler the longer you're away from that experience. Like, people are always going to raise the bar. Like, they remember it a lot sketchier it was because the story's cooler. That happens. But I don't know. People just like telling cool stories. So they're always going to up the level and say, oh, it was a lot more dangerous than it actually was. Yes, the Sierra, I was scared shitless. And there was probably a couple times that my life was in danger. But in all reality, you do it as safe as possible, so it probably wasn't as sketchy as I say it is. But at the time, you're like, holy shit. And then after the fact, it seems a lot more dangerous than it actually was. But you just have to be smart about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Okay, so what is addicting about through hiking for you? Like specifically, what is it that keeps drawing you back to it to even come back and redo those same Triple Crown trails? What is it for you?
I'm fascinated by human endurance. I know you're a trail runner too, and I got into running a lot last spring and stuff. And you follow these, I was following these ultra marathoners, and it's the same mindset. Those guys from the videos I've seen and interviews I've seen from ultra marathoners, I just love human endurance and what the body is capable of. And, talking to people in town this past year, they're just so in a bubble. And I think I made a story the other day on my Instagram post. It's like, well, if your only challenge for the day is waiting in a line at Starbucks, then you know what I mean? You need to
I love
reevaluate.
that. Yeah.
You need to reevaluate your fucking life and what you're getting too comfortable in town. I'm getting too comfortable in town. I've noticed this past year, I'm becoming a weak ass bitch. Like, I need to be back around that are challenging themselves physically and mentally. That's how you get better. If you're just stuck in this bubble in town and you're just going through the same bullshit routine every single day, your mind is getting weak, your body is getting weak. You have to force yourself to go to the gym. It's like when you're out on a through hike, you have no fucking choice but to battle through this shit. That's what I love. I love the challenge of it. When you're standing at the southern terminus and knowing that you have 3,100 miles, 2,600 miles, 1,800 miles, whatever it is, in front of you, and you're like, all right, let's go. I love the challenges that you have to go through on these trails. And no matter what happens, you're going to push through it. I love that aspect of it. And then on side of that is just the freedom that you get. You got nobody telling you what to do. It's absolute freedom. Yeah, but the human endurance side of it, I love that. And you surround yourself with these through hikers, and we're just all feeding off each other. We're going through the same shit. I don't care what your background is. I don't care, what color you are, who you fuck. I don't give a shit about that. We're all doing the same thing out there. All that stuff that people complain about in towns and being offended about, it doesn't make any difference out there. We're all going through the same shit. And we're all working together to do that. That's what I love about through hiking.
Man, it is so different, right? It's like food almost becomes the currency out there, right? Paper money ain't going to do anything. That's where you really realize how worthless money can be, is when you're in the middle of
food, water, shelter, clothing. That is it.
Yeah. Now, you talked about, I was going to ask you about this because you brought up trail running and that you got into it a little bit. Are you still doing that? Is that like, do you find a really good parallel between through hiking endurance and then trail running endurance?
The mindset, I think, is the same. I wouldn't call myself an ultra runner. I got into running to clear my head, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. But I wouldn't call I'm not in that world. But like I said, watching videos of people like Courtney Dauwalter and these folks and listening to them talk, their mindset is the same as a through hiker. It's one day at a time, 1 mile at a time. It's you have to break it down the same thing. I would assume in an ultra marathon and a through hike, you're breaking it down in small increments to get through a bigger task. When you start looking at the big picture, if you're doing like a 100-mile race or a 50-mile race, whatever it happens to be, if you're going through some shit mentally, like Courtney says, the pain cave, and you dwell on that, knowing you have 50 miles to go, 70 miles to go, 2,000 miles to go. If you look at that in that picture, you're screwing yourself mentally. But I think the ultra running community, as well as through hikers, you break it down into small increments, one town at a time, one water source at a time, and you chip away at it slowly but surely. That's the only way you can do something like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, man, like what is your long-term plan with through hiking and the adventures that you're on? Are you interested at all in doing a high route, Sierra high route, Wind River high route? Are you interested in doing like 100-miler or anything like that? Or is it the through hikes? Is that your main jam?
I think through hiking is my main jam. I can see myself, I always said I'll continue through hiking until I stop loving it. If it becomes a job and I'm just doing it just to do it, then I'll stop and I'll get into something else. But at this point in time, I still love this shit. That hasn't gone away. So if you start looking at long trails, not just in the U.S. but overseas, it's endless. There's always another trail to do. Yes, I plan on I'm going to do the Triple Crown again, but that's just my own personal thing. But yeah, there's plenty of other trails overseas I want to do still. I don't see it ending anytime soon. If it comes to a point where I'm just not having fun doing it, then I'll get into ultra running or biking across the country or something that still allows me to challenge myself physically and mentally, but it's just a different, mode of transportation, let's say. But as of now, there's no
so
plans on
still,
stopping.
so it'll still revolve around human endurance and pushing your limits essentially, whether or not
100%.
that's through hiking or biking, bike packing, or anything like that. That's interesting, man, because I've thought I've kind of in the same way where I like doing all sorts of stuff in the outdoors because I feel like it all kind of parallels each other. Whether you're trying to, through hike or you do a bike packing trip or anything like that. And that's kind of the cool thing is that the skills that you learn from through hiking, you can take to bike packing, you can take to ultra running. And all of it kind of parallels each other, but you do get a little bit different experience and it opens up different areas of the world for you. So in other words, yeah, you're through hiking all these trails, but then you do the Oregon Outback Trail, right? That's on these gravel dirt roads that you never would walk, right? But now you're biking it because you have a different mode of transportation. That's what I kind of think is fascinating about getting into different things in the outdoors.
And it keeps it interesting too. I just haven't lost
Yeah.
the love for through hiking yet. I'm still giddy as ever when I go get ready for these trails again. That hasn't gone away. So I'll continue doing it. I don't plan too far ahead of my life. Like I take it as it comes. And if one day I wake up and say, well, shit, I don't really feel like hiking anymore. Let's just go to pick up a bike and see how that works out. Then I'll go do that. But I don't plan too far ahead.
Man, a lot of people write books about their time on the PCT and things like that. But I think that if you wrote a book, it would be a banger. What do you think about that?
Yeah, people, I get that request. I've gotten that request a few times. When are you going to write a book? I would like to write a book someday. The problem I have is I'm still living my book. You know what I mean? I'm still living it. I could write a book. I could probably write a book about just the PCT experience or just the AT or CDT, whatever. I could do that. My story, it's when I got into this, like I said before, I just got sober and I was learning how to live life again. My whole life has been revolved around, going through that pain when I was younger in my 20s and early 30s, and then getting sober and learning how to deal with this life. That is still going on. You know what I mean? My story hasn't ended yet. Yeah, I think it would be cool to write a book about the PCT or something like that. But the idea I have, if I was to ever write a book, is my whole life story. So, that book might not be getting written until I'm so decrepit I can't fucking walk anymore. But I'm still living my book in my head.
Yeah. Maybe that's your endurance event when you get older.
I suppose,
Writing
yeah.
a giant book.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Now, curious too, if you weren't through hiking, what would you be doing instead?
Oh, shit. It's a good question. I've never known what I wanted to do with my life since I was a kid. Remembering when I was younger, I never knew what I wanted to do. I went to college just because that was the thing to do.
Right.
But I'm just taking classes for the fuck because that's what you do. You go to college. I didn't do shit with that. After 9/11 happened, I was at Michigan State, and my 9/11 happened, and I said, well, fuck, I want to, I have 343 tattooed on the back of my arm here. Is the number of firefighters that died that day in New York City, and I got a fire into my ass to become a firefighter. So I went to the fire academy and did that, and that's what I thought I wanted to do for a while. And then I started drinking my ass off and alcoholism took over my life. So that kind of went out the wayside. And then I became a line cook for 10 years. So my path in life, I've just taken it as it comes. Thankfully, I found through hiking because that basically saved me. But, if I wasn't through hiking, I'd probably still be a drunk or I'd be dead or in jail, quite honestly. Because I was heading down a path that was so self-destructive that it's still a shock to me that I made it out the other side. So, nowadays, through hiking is my life. My whole mindset is around hiking. People probably at work hate talking to me because my whole 24 hours a day is thinking about trail life. That's it.
Really?
That's it. That's all I think about.
Specifically, like gear or your next trails or planning?
The view,
what is it that
views,
you're
being
thinking?
outside. I don't care about all the gear. I don't give two shits about the gear. I've seen
I know,
people
right?
hike these trails with every fucking piece of gear imaginable. That doesn't matter. I don't do gear reviews. I don't recommend gear to anybody because I think it's all bullshit. Why are you out there to through hike to show off your new fancy fucking Patagucci bullshit? No, you're out there to enjoy Mother Nature. That's what it's about. Stop fucking caring about what other people are wearing and what they're using, that doesn't fucking matter. Look at this goddamn sunrise we have here. This is what it's about. You know what I mean? Oh, this is IBTAT's top 5 fucking, shoelaces list. Who gives a flying fuck what IBTAT thinks? Who gives a fuck? I'm no goddamn expert. I'm walking up the same fucking mountain you are. You got a different pair of shoes on. Okay, cool. Let's go do this fucking mountain. This is what it's all about.
Dude, I totally agree with that. And I have to say, I mean, I have a YouTube channel too, and I have to say reviews like that are my least favorite things to make, but for whatever reason, they over-index on my channel. And I don't know if it's because of the fact that we're a very consumable nation, because most of my views are coming from the US or Europe or whatever. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's the obsession with gear.
100%. And I totally get it. And it annoys the living shit out of me when I'll check my analytics one day on my YouTube channels. And the most viewed I have out of all 600 videos are my CDT gear list, my PCT gear list, across the board. I put out that video, Thru-Hiker, Embrace Through Brutality, one of my favorite videos I've ever done. And it was about the experience and what thru-hikers go through mentally, but it doesn't have nearly the views as my gear list. And like you said, it's all consumerism. And I am guilty of this too. I'm not trying to act like I don't care about, all this stuff, because I'm like this with camera gear. I'll watch all stupid ass, YouTubers talking about camera gear. So I do the same thing, but I think people are just so obsessed with it because it is a consumer world, and they think that there's some secret to through hiking and getting the best gear, when in all reality, once you get out there, it really doesn't make a difference, quite honestly.
On camera gear, one of my questions was going to be, if you had to only bring one lens to hike, what lens would that be?
The same lens I've carried since day number 1. It's my 16 to 35. I don't know if I have it here. That's not it. I've got lenses everywhere. My 16 to 35 is the lens I use 99.9% of the time on these through hikes. If it was up to me, I'd carry every fucking lens I own. I'd carry my big ass wildlife lens if my body can handle it, but I'm limited to what I can carry on my back. And so the 16 to 35, it's my opinion, it's a perfect landscape lens, and that's why I'm out there to take photos of landscapes out there. But over the years, I've developed a love for other forms of photography, like macro photography and wildlife photography. On a through hike, you just can't carry that stuff. So I carry my 16 to 35, and then I'll usually carry one other lens just to change things up. I don't know what I'm going to carry this year. I'll probably carry my 85 millimeter. It's a good portrait lens because I want to take more photos of other hikers and have, give them the photos basically when I'm done, because people love seeing images of themselves out on these trails and doing badass things. So I'll take it probably my 85 and just have a little change up. But my 16 to 35 lives on my camera 99.9% of the time.
Okay. Now, a couple questions with that. So you're using that 16 to 35 for videography as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like what I carry, so I have this Sony, it's like a kit lens that I got for my Sony way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, I feel like it has just been so good for me out there, and it's an 18 to 135. So I can actually like zoom in a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
How come you only like a 16 to 35 millimeter? Because I feel like, and I'm not as knowledgeable about this, but I feel like you can't zoom that much with a 35. Do you know what I'm saying? Like 135, at least I get a little bit of range.
It's a trade-off. Sony makes I think it's a 24 to 105. And I have a guy I met on trail. I think I met him on the PCT. He's a photographer too, and that's the lens he was carrying. Yes, it gives you more adaptability, let's just say. You can zoom in and get some better shots. It comes down to whatever you want to photograph, really. You know what I mean? Yes, if I had a longer reach, I could do more things with it, but forcing myself to use basically one lens, it makes me open my eyes up to this is what the lens I have, I'm going to make it work regardless. So it doesn't matter if you just carry, a prime lens, a 30 millimeter prime lens or something like that. Well, that's the lens you have, so make it work. So that's exactly what I do.
Totally.
I do carry, I carry a drone, as you probably know, and I carry
Yes.
a GoPro. I have other ways to shoot video, which changes up, my toolbox, I guess. It gives me more tools to use, but I make that 16 to 35 work.
Yeah. Okay. No, that totally makes sense. And what's nice about the 16 is that when you're talking to it like this,
Mm-hmm.
You can actually get your whole head in the frame, and it doesn't
Right.
look weird. Like even with 18, it feels a little bit close
Yeah.
on me. So
I
yeah,
would
it's kind
say
of interesting.
that's the main reason that 16 millimeter is nice is when I'm vlogging and doing these talking headshots, I don't have to
Yeah.
reach my arm out. I can just
Right.
full bore and I'm in the frame kind of a deal. And then with photos, you just, it's great wide angle, gets most of the landscape. And I've gotten better with composing shots over the years. Whereas
Right.
it pisses me off kind of to look back on my Instagram, some of those old photos I took on the ET or PCT when I was just learning this shit. And I'm like, holy shit, that was a horrible fucking photo. I've gotten a lot better with that over the years, but it's just a learning process.
Yeah, man. No, but it is kind of cool to see how far you come sometimes too. You're like, wow, that was garbage.
It
Same
is
with videos
garbage.
for me.
I still take garbage photos. I'm no camera guru, but I would like to think that I have gotten better. I noticed when I was in Sweden as well as Scotland, those were shorter trails, but I was very meticulous about. I had the luxury of doing a shorter trail where I wasn't under a time crunch weather-wise, so I could take my time a little bit more. And I found myself, sitting at rivers or, amazing view and really taking my time composing the shot and really making sure the settings were right. And I've noticed the last two trails I've done that a lot more. And on the long trails on the PCT this year, I don't think I'll have the luxury to do that as much, but at least I know what an image should be like balanced wise. So I'll save myself time when I set up these shots now going forward. But it's just a learning process like anything else.
It is kind of cool that you can, between the two different types of through hikes, you have a shorter one and you have the longer ones. The different type of content that you can create on each one kind of changes. So even though maybe you are doing a shorter hike, at least you probably were like, oh, well, I can actually take time to do these rather than, yeah, I can't hike the PCT right now or I'm not doing it, but at least I can do different types of content and then at least learn and push myself that way too.
Yeah, for sure. Now I would say knowing what I know about photography and how to put these videos together, I think this year around compared to my last hike of the PCT is going to be night and day. That drone that I started carrying, that pissed off a lot of people because a lot of people hate drones and I get that. But the comments I get from that drone footage are people love to see that. Like, and I try to justify, not that I have to justify to other people, but I take a lot of, I love watching those like old school Discovery History Channel shows like Mountain Men and Axemen and these types of places. If you go back and watch those, every other fucking shot is a drone shot. And there's a reason for that. It just gives you a whole new perspective. When you see those drone shots of me in like New Mexico walking down a 20-mile dirt road and that drone pans up and you see from above how big this landscape is and how small you are, it puts everything in a different perspective, which you don't get when you're looking at through a GoPro. It's just, you don't get that. You realize how small you are in this world and how far you have to walk when you see that shit from above. So that drone has been next level for me carrying that thing.
I agree, man. When I bought mine, I uploaded some bike packing documentaries and they did really, really well. And I was like, is this because I had this drone and all these establishing shots of where I was at? And I was like, I thought in my head, man, this was such a great investment. Because at first you're kind of, before you get into any aerial stuff, you're like, do I really need this?
Yeah.
But when you replay it back to yourself, just like you're saying, oh my God.
It makes a big difference.
Such a unique perspective.
And that's why I carry that. And that's why I carry a GoPro. Having all these different ways of shooting these videos, it makes a difference. If I was to shoot the whole trail with just that one 16-35 lens, yeah, it would work. But seeing it from different perspectives just makes the video elevated, in my opinion. So that's why I carry all this gear on me to shoot these videos.
Yeah. So you mentioned your videos are going to be different than the PCT in 2019 and your videos after that. So yeah, what are you going to be focusing on going through this time with the content and your videos and your photography?
Good question. I don't know. I think I've gotten better at when I'm filming these long hikes, I'm always thinking in my head, how is this going to be a video at the end of the day? Now, when I shoot, I'm shooting from sun up to sun down. That it's just the stuff you see on the video. I would say 60% of it never gets used, but I film all day long, so I have a database of footage when I get in my tent every night that I can pull from and make the best video possible. But when I am shooting during the day, I am thinking of how the final product is going to be. It's not just willy-nilly, I'm just shooting whatever. I am meticulous about, okay, is this going to be good for the video? That does go through my head. So I think I've just gotten better with it over the last 7 years. And I think the videos will show that. If you go back and watch my Sweden or my Scotland videos, I think their production value wise, they're a lot better than the PCT or obviously the AT and even the CDT. So it's always in the back of my head how that final product is going to look. But priority number one always is pushing miles and getting to the Canadian border. But I do this for one, for my own personal journal so that I can look back when I'm 90 fucking years old and see what the hell I did with my life. And number two, it is a platform to inspire other people to get off their asses and do the same thing. You know, I mean, if it was just a personal journal, I wouldn't put so much effort into it. But I know there's an audience that people, you know, either live vicariously through what I'm doing or use it as motivation to do it themselves. So I want them to get off their asses and do the same thing I am. That's why I put so much effort into bringing the best content I possibly can for these people.
I agree. And it's great stuff. And there is, you know, you could take photos and things like that, but a video of your time on a trail, there's nothing like going back and watching that 2 years later. It puts me, and I don't know if it does the same thing for you, I'm sure it probably does, but it puts me exactly into the feeling, the smells, and the emotions that I had when I was going through that trail. There's nothing else like that does it for me. And so anybody that's thinking about videoing a hike, I highly recommend it. Although it is a pain in the butt for sure, but
it is a pain in the butt. But exactly like you said, I still go back and watch some of those videos when I'm having a shit day, stuck in here and doing a stupid job and all this stuff. I'll go back and watch some of those videos, and it brings me right back to that moment. You know, what's the cliche? A photo is worth 1,000 words. The same thing for photography. You can look at an image. I mean, you can look at an image of this, and
right.
You know what I mean? This speaks volumes. I was on my deathbed from alcohol, and I got sober on my own, and I walked 2,000 miles. This one image summarizes that whole experience of struggle. And that's why I do it for myself as well. And same thing with these videos. When I'm having a shit day, I can go back and watch that, and it puts me in a happy place, and a happy time frame of mind. So yeah, it is a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work. There's no doubt about it, but it's worth it to me. I would say if you are going to do this yourself, yeah, you don't have to carry all this fucking camera gear, but do it for yourself, if nothing else, because one of these days you're going to not be able to do it, and you're going to want to have those memories to look back on. And that's why I did it from day number one, is so I had a video journal of what the fuck I just did with my life the past 30 years. So that's why you have to do it. If you get a following, whatever, that's just gravy. But if you're going to do something like that, understand it's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to the gear, this is my only gear question of the day,
sure,
besides the camera one. I think this is a good question. What is one piece of gear you thought was overhyped until you actually started using it? Does anything jump into your head with that?
That's a good question. Let me think about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing comes to mind. When that question came up, what I thought about was the other end of it. What was overhyped that has no use really on these through hikes? Okay. A lot of that came up through my head when you said that. For looking about personally, you know, when I was watching all these YouTubers and looking at forums and stuff for PCT hikers and AT as well, everybody seemed to have camp shoes. I think that's the number one thing I've personally found that's completely 100% useless. Like, you hear these people say, oh, it's so nice to be able to throw off your trail runners and put on some camp shoes. And bitch, when I get done hiking 30 miles, I ain't walking nowhere at camp. Okay, I'm getting in my fucking tent and I'm going to bed. Like, there was zero walking around camp. The only time I got out of my tent at night was to go take a shit or take a piss. And half the time I just unzipped my tent and pissed right outside of my vestibule. So, and then the river crossings too. It was such a pain in the ass to take off my trail runners and put on camp shoes to walk across the rivers. I found real quick that it's just 100% easier is to walk through the river with your trail runners. As long as it's a sunny day, those bitches are dry in 30 minutes. So yeah, the whole camp shoes thing, that went out the window really quick. And I go back and watch those PCT videos of these big ass fucking Crocs hanging off the back of my pack. Yeah. Like, what the fuck were you doing? That was dumb. So that was probably the number one thing that I threw out the door real quick.
Man, the only time camp shoes have ever been valuable to me is when you wake up in the morning, you got to take a dump real fast, and you're like trying to put on your freaking ultras or whatever you got. You're trying to like put them on you're trying to figure out where they're at in the first place. So you're like trying to get out the door as fast as you can. Yeah. That would be the only time. But yeah, I know, I totally agree. I went through that phase too, man, but that's a good one.
Yeah. Good times, man. A lot of people talk shit about my, my camp seat, my little thermarest thing you see on top of my pack down with. I guess some people would argue that's pointless too, which I totally get, probably is, but I don't know, personally, I like, especially I noticed it in Scotland when that whole fucking country was a sponge and no matter where you sat down, it was just wet. And it was nice to have something that you just don't feel that discomfort of wet moss going up your ass crack. But yeah, there's a lot of things I carry that people can probably argue is pointless, but you know, everybody's got their personal items. So if you want to wear camp shoes, don't take my advice, wear fucking camp shoes. But for me, they're meaningless.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have one final question for you, man. And it would be, if you could go back and tell your 2018 self one thing before you started the AT, what would you tell yourself?
Stop stressing. Like I mentioned before, when I was going into that REI in Nashville and I was so wide-eyed and I had all these questions for this girl, stop stressing about it, man. Just go walk. And it's one of those things you don't know until you actually go do it. You know, I got it all the time when I was working on the AT and mountain crossings in Georgia. It's the first outfitter you come. It's mile 31 on the AT, and especially on the Appalachian Trail, it's most of these thru-hikers' first trail that they do, and they don't know shit, and they got so many questions, and it doesn't matter really. You'll learn as you go. Stop stressing about the mileage and the resupply points and all this stuff. It takes away from the enjoyment of what you're doing, in my opinion. Yes, you have to understand how your gear works, and that's why I did so many shakedown hikes before I thru-hiked. I wanted to know, is this stuff actually going to work? And then once I knew that, then okay, then that stress is gone. I can just walk and enjoy myself. So I would go back to 2017 IBTAT and say, well, get the gear you need, go out and do a few weekend trips, find out that it works, and just go walk. Stop stressing about all the mileage and resupply points and all this stuff.
Yeah. So the biggest prep that you can do, or the most important prep that you can do, is like shakedown hikes. It sounds like
100%. You know, when I was a weekend warrior, let's just say in 2017, I basically did half the AT from the southern section up to Damascus. And I was just going out, and it was more or less, it wasn't as a shakedown hike per se. I just loved going out and hiking and camping and enjoying that freedom. But it was teaching me how to be out in the woods and use my gear and stuff like that. So shakedown hikes are very important. That being said, that girl I started the AT with, I don't think she had ever slept in a tent once, and she finished the trail before I did. So, you know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal, but it does help to know how your gear actually works.
Dude, as always, you crush this. I was telling him before this podcast that nobody gets me more stoked to go through hiking than IBTAT, man. It's I think you are a very unique individual in the through hiking world and really enjoy your content, man. So how can people come and, where can they consume your media and stuff like that at?
I try to keep it to a minimum just because social media is one of those necessary evils, people like us, let's just say. But I limit it to Instagram and YouTube. That's it. I don't have Facebook or anything like that. So yeah, Instagram, being a lover of photography, once I hit these trails, you'll probably get sick of me because my photos are going to be coming out every single day. And then the videos, I generally give myself 2-week buffer once I start the PCT to where the content will start pushing out. And I do that, just to have content built up so that when I do start posting, videos are coming out every day. So you're going to have a video every single day for 6 months straight. That's the way I like to do it. So it does piss off a lot of people that my videos and my photos are delayed a little bit, but that's the reason I do it. Once they get posted, they'll be out every single day. So
yeah, I cannot believe that people will get mad about. I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine editing on trail. What I can't imagine. So
I actually enjoy that part of it. To be honest with you, it's a nice way to unwind in my tent at night. I actually enjoy that process of it. Filming is easy because you're out there, you're looking at cool shit all day anyway, so that's just second nature. But I actually enjoy it. It's a good way to wind down in my tent, pull out my iPad and edit the video and see that day's hike 10 hours of hiking condensed down into a 10-minute video. I like watching that at the end of the night in my tent, and I hope other people enjoy it too. So, but yeah, the armchair hikers will be out in full force, I'm sure. I still get comments from my AT videos saying I'm doing shit wrong. It's like, bitch, I finished that trail like 7 years ago. Obviously, I did something right.
Man, one of my all-time favorite videos of yours is when you were reading mean comments and
Oh, yeah.
responding to them. Oh my god, dude, it was so funny.
I don't know if I've gotten older and wiser or just don't care as much anymore. But yeah, some of those rants back in the day, I'm sure I'll rant again on the PCT because it gets to me every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
I've learned it's rolled off my back a little better the last couple of years. But one of those days, you'll be having a shit day on trail and you'll get some asshole commenting from his lazy boy and it just sets you off. And I'm human like anybody else. And the rants I'm sure will come. So be prepared. Do not let your grandkids watch my videos because I have no filter on me whatsoever.
No.
If you don't like it, go watch Dixie videos because I really don't give a flying fuck what you think about me.
Geeks me out, man. You couldn't have said that any better. That's exactly how it is. Oh my god. Yeah. Well, awesome. I'll link that in the show notes below. If you guys are on Spotify, leave us a 5-star review, and then YouTube, subscribe and like. We'll see you for the next one. Cool. All right. I'll hit the record. Stop.